Just a couple of points here. We've gone over a lot of this. It does have a huge economic impact, and that's the key to us getting support from the industry. The only reason I'm in this today is because my industry came to me and said, hey, we got to do something. This is killing us. So that's where we're at right now. It is a manageable disease. To what degree is kind of the question. Where I got the most griping from, obviously, was from the backgrounders and the stockers. Most of them are seeing the BRD complex as a increased mortality, increased morbidity, which gets down to a big cost in money, and that gets their attention. Contrary to what may seem logical, and Dr. Jones mentioned this, when the market is high, people seem to care less about the quality of the cattle in a lot of cases. They'll buy anything. When it's low, there's a disincentive for the cattle that aren't good. So testing, in some cases, kind of has a reverse effect. Gone over this. Cow-calf guy is a little hard to convince that this is something that's good for him. Ignorance is bliss. And as Dr. Jones says, if they don't know they got a PI calf, then it's not illegal for them to sell it. So convincing them that it's important to them to test is a little bit of a challenge. And the reproductive effects can make a big difference to them if you can convince them that that's what's happening, that it's costing them 15, 20% in their calf crop, which means money to them. And then they won't be making maybe the viral machines. But infection scenarios are 3, and I got a couple of graphs in here that I borrowed from Dr. Gibbons. And if you're going to the symposium tomorrow and Dr. Gibbons is on the program, you're in for a real treat. He has a very unique delivery that he participated at the KVMA last year, and it's very, very intellectually stimulating. I can imagine how his students respond to him. This is his slide, and you can see it's quite complex, but it really goes through those things of the acute infection, the transient infection, what happens to the fetus, and then how we make the persistent calf. I think we probably covered this enough. The acute and the transient infection can have a lot of different faces. Maybe the most important thing is the immune suppression that we see and the infertility that we see in cows. In the fetal infection is based a lot on the timing of it. Just a little different version of the same slide that Dr. Jones had. The persistent infected calf is made there in that 40 to 120 day range of infection. The expression of PIs we've talked a lot about can look very normal. You can't tell by looking which calf is a PI and which is normal. Main thing is the PI is shedding enormous amounts of virus. I've heard up to 1,000 times the virus every day of its life compared to the animal with just a transient infection. The immune suppression of that virus in the naive calf is certainly important. The whole mechanism of why that PI calf doesn't respond and then maybe suffers some of these other things of mucosal disease and acute death later is something that I'm still trying to get my hands around. 2 ways a PI calf gets made, and that is certainly in what we just talked about with the transient infection of its dam in that window. Also, if you have a mom, a cow in the herd that is a persistently infected animal, she's going to make a persistently infected calf every year. So just some you got to remember, I'm giving this talk in particular this time to Farm Bureau with about 100 people in the audience, most of who are 65 and older and farmers. And I just want to get some very, very basic facts to them. That PI is made during pregnancy. If it's born a PI, it's always going to be a PI. If it's not born a PI, it's never going to be a PI. And that the meat is actually safe to eat. So, again, another slide that just shows the route of infections. But the control points really are kind of the important thing that I want to talk about. As stressed by Dr. Jones, working with a veterinarian on a complete herd management program is important. I equate this no small way to the EONIS program, which when I came to this office, we had money for, and we're making a lot of progress. The money went away and the program went away. But it was an opportunity to get the veterinarian involved in the management, not just of EONIS, but of the entire herd health program. And that's really important. All herd additions should get tested, isolate new acquisitions into your herd, test on a current status in a lot of times to start with, so you know the baseline of where you are, detect and remove PIs, biosecurity, just general good herd management is important. Vaccination program is certainly part of that program. So recommended testing initially, and depending on what you're trying to accomplish with your management program, but all calves, any cow that didn't have a calf, including heifers, all bulls. One of the testing companies had a gentleman working for him that sold tested bulls, performance-tested bulls. They started testing their bulls for PI, and what do you know? They found some. So you can buy it with a quality animal you think you're getting, and all of a sudden you find out that you've got a PI in your herd. So what's the incidence? And I certainly base this on Kentucky, but I would suggest that most of your states are similar. It's hard to know what that is. A common factor that's put around is about 0.4% or 4 in 1,000. It varies as to class of animal. Certainly, the young calf can be somewhere from less than 1% to certainly as 10% or more. And the number of farms that have one or more PI calves estimated to be anywhere from 4 to 17%. Same slide. I think it gets passed around from Dr. Hessman, who actually was in Kentucky speaking to a group of a working group that I head up and had this very slide. But it gives you an idea about where we're at with that 4 in 1,000 figure. Some of the testing results from Kentucky labs, and we have actually 4 labs, 2 university labs, 2 private labs doing testing. This is the most recent, and one of the labs that does a lot of testing just reported yesterday, and I don't have that up there, but you can see there's a discrepancy between the university labs and the private labs. The Gold States reported to me out of 50,000 tests that we had 174 positives. So the incidence of the private labs seems to be higher than the diagnostic labs, and I think that's because of the class of animal they're seeing. We tend to see more cow-calf guys with a problem getting tested at the diagnostic labs at universities, whereas most of the backgrounder testing is being done at the private labs. So what can legally be done with a PI animal? Obviously, it's to everybody's advantage to get it out of the herd, but we present the producer with really 4 options. He can send it to slaughter immediately. He can isolate and feed it on his own premises and then slaughter it. He can move it to a permitted feedlot, which I'm glad to permit. I don't have any permitted, but I certainly would. Probably not a lot of money in it because, as Dr. Jones indicated, these calves tend to one day just turn up dead after you've invested a bunch of money in them. What usually happens, though, is they elect number 4, especially if it's a backgrounder. He just wants it done, he wants it dead and gone. So by the time we've contacted them, they already know he's positive. In most cases, they've euthanized him and buried him. The main point is you can't sell him at the stockyards. This is a law that governs what I do. Written in about 1940, I think, but it's still applicable today. Probably written for brucellosis and TB, but it essentially says if you have a reportable disease, which BVD is, because in our reportable disease reg, we've referenced the OIE list. We don't respond to every BVD positive that we get. We do respond to BVD-PI positives. So you can't transport, sell, offer for sale, trade, or give away such an animal without my permission. So what we've developed some guidelines to just guide what we want to do in response. It is a reportable disease. All of our labs are reporting now. There initially was a lot of conversation about the significance of one test, of one ELISA test, and how confident you could be in that test. What I've gotten from some of the manufacturers at least, and I think confirmed by some testing that's been done on PI positives, especially at the private labs, is that there's a good confidence that one test identifies that animal as a PI. Maybe in the range of 95 to 98%. One of the companies that makes the test off the record, because they can't say this on the label, off the record said they feel like it's 98% effective. I guess to the point it is somewhat quantifiable. I don't know how much, but certainly we will allow that calf to be retested if that's what the owner wants to do. So the actions we take when we're presented with the PI calf report is contact that owner and find out what the status of that animal is at that time. As I said, many times that animal is dead and buried by then. Provide that as an opportunity to educate the owner about PI, what he can do and what he can do in response to the disease in his herd. Present them the options that we just talked about as far as handling that particular animal, stressing that you can't sell it. We have a working group formed. I work for the State Board of Agriculture. They're the ones that hire me, and they're the ones that fire me. They're not necessarily the ones that pay me because the commissioner does that. But we formed this in December. We've had 2 meetings. As you can see, it represents a wide base of stakeholders from Farm Bureau to Livestock Marketing Association, Cattlemen's Association, Dairy Development Council, the laboratories, and veterinarians. Our job was to review Kentucky law, like I just showed you, and to look at other states' programs, which I started out with the Alabama program, looked at Mississippi's program. Dr. Houston is here and very familiar with that. Excellent program that we're mirroring a lot of things out of. Colorado also has a very nice program. So our goal was to develop specific recommendations for regulations and management programs. So things that we are considering is a certification program for the cow-calf guy to where he can be certified as I don't know that it's possible to say BVD free, but BVD managed, controlled, whatever we would want to call it. So there's some confidence for the guy that's buying animals from him, seed stock, if you will, that he's not buying a problem. Participation programs, again, for the guy who doesn't want to be on a full program but wants to sell PI negative calves, some way to verify that. Official identification is vital to the program, and we don't have it today. ADT doesn't require it in beef cattle. The labs don't require it to do the test, so it's difficult to know when you get a positive back that you're actually dealing with the animal if you go to the farm and try to find it. Visual ID of some sort for positives, branding. It's what we used to do with Banks cattle so that they didn't get recycled, that people could see readily that they were positive. But we're looking at that. Methods of verifying test negative cattle. We have a couple of models that were driven again by the industry. In this case, for exportation to Japan, PVP programs were very effective. They had a market incentive attached to them that we necessarily don't have today, but we could have, again, working with the order buyers and the backgrounders to make those cattle worth a little more. We're looking at indemnity programs, and tomorrow I'm going to demonstrate a model of a program that was demonstrated to our working group 3 or 4 weeks ago. Don't know if it's real, but we'll talk about it. Again, I think an indemnity program has to be attached to some kind of a certification or participation program so that it has more meaning and is not just a way for people to take advantage. We'd like to promote an incentive, a positive incentive instead of a disincentive. We have what we call precondition for 45 program today, which is getting very little participation. It's gone from having 35 or 40,000 calves 10 years ago to having 3,000 or 4,000 now. Again, because in Dr. Jones, the order buyers are not willing to pay an incentive for cattle that they know are a certain class. They're just buying cattle. And it's very difficult to get them to want to participate. And that's where it has to be for the cow-calf guy to want to do it. Borrowed that from a former administrator, and I think it's true. I can't get anything done if I don't get my industry to work with me, so working together works. So.